Well, good morning. As we're sitting here at LTV on Monday morning, July 3rd. Unbelievable with the speed of time that goes by as we're entering, a very busy weekend, into a very busy week, welcoming 4th of July, all the festivities around. I do have the footage actually of the fireworks for whatever it's worth. And what I do have is a very precious guest that we tried on Friday to get on the air, and for some reason it didn't work, but I'm very happy to have Joanlee Montefusco.
Hi.
Thank you very much. So nice to have you this morning. And well, I met Joanlee at Ashwa Hall with the Vito Sisti Women show, and we had obviously Vito here, and we had him a few times, and even purchased a piece of artwork from her, and have also some footage from her work at home. But Joanlee, tell us a little bit who Joanlee is.
Who Joanlee is, or
Yes.
who Joanlee's art is. You have options here. Well, I'll talk about the art. It's a lot easier sometimes. But,
We'll tell the story of the person.
Yeah, well, you know, art is historically based and culturally based, and so is mine. Symbolism. I'm much more of a symbolist, which is a big throwback. I mean, we're talking late, what are we talking about? Late 19th century? You know, we're talking Gauguin, we're talking Munch, and Vuillard. And for those who aren't familiar with the premise of symbolism, it is a group of people who at one point rejected modernization, rejected the ills of industrial society. And the vortex that was left with an emotional void, and they felt that modern society contributed to that, and a psychological bent that was a bit unhealthy, you know, a little awkward, a little uncomfortable, psychological. So I think I try to go in that bent.
In that, so because you know, with me, coherence and art,
They don't work?
they do, but they kind of find themselves under the surface, somewhat buried because of the level of comfort that one achieves in the process. So suddenly one realizes that all these awarenesses, so to speak, are not to be found only because they're somewhat established.
Well, I'm not an outsider artist. I'm actually someone who is educated and has a degree. And I was fortunate or unfortunate, depending on from where you're standing, to be raised in Catholicism, which was a great historical background for the greatest art, you know, the high Renaissance. I can go in anywhere and read a painting. I can go around the world and go in and say, okay, there's John the Baptist, there's, you know, there's Christ in the garden, you know, fighting his demons. There's a, you know, and of course, as soon as I could, I totally rejected my background, but I had the luxury of that particular education and being allowed to then be educated in the arts. So you take all that, and then you start making art, and you try and throw it all away. Mm-hmm. You try and throw away everything you've been taught so that you can go back to the core of expression. And I think symbolism kind of captures that psychology, you know, that awkwardness.
I guess I enjoyed the privilege of shortcuts altogether.
Yeah.
Because I was introduced to art when I was probably almost 40, and then well, there's always this thing, you know, that I must admit that the knowledge on the behalf of being educated in that matter is felt. I mean, the lack of knowledge.
Yes.
And at some point, I say I just have to drop everything and go and educate myself. But nevertheless, there's a privilege of not knowing much. There's a privilege of not having to deal with putting all your knowledge behind you.
Yeah, it goes either way. It really does. I feel more confident having had a background. I feel more at ease in the world. I mean, I do go and say, I go out and people ask, well, what do you do? Who are you? And I describe myself as an artist, and I've known people say, oh, that's hubris. You call yourself an artist, you know? It's like, no, it's not hubris. I took the time, I got the education. It's what I'm most interested in. It's what feeds my soul. And if I stay away from it too long, I get neurotic.
Yeah.
So it's actually an obsessive compulsive disorder at some level.
Yes. No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'd like to see you work every day. Every day.
Me too. Me too.
So.
But I'm part of, that's why I call myself a symbolist. I'm part of the ills of society. I am also a product of 21st century, late 20th century ills of society. And here I am, the living manifestation of that. You know, a lifetime of trying to work within modernization, computers and cars and the interactions we do in society. And it's much more complicated, and I long for the primitive. I long to get back to a simpler way of being.
So if we speak of coherence, so then therefore you would find yourself deliberate, intentional, therefore that the knowledge will result in more control of the process and in more of a deliberate, directional, finding yourself subject matter-wise, technique-wise, in front of a painting, in front of a canvas?
You know, the consciousness has come over time. I was driven to create in a certain medium, and it came out in a certain visual context. And then over time, I realized what it was that I could define it as. It wasn't initially such a consciousness, but having had the luxury, like I said, of having the education, I could step 2 feet back and say, "Oh, I get it." But then again, all right, throw in this wrench. In 40 years, someone else will say, well, she thought she was one thing, but she was actually a Zulu Watu or something, you know, yeah. And she was part of an era and a movement that is actually this, you know, and she was the forefront of that. But yes, there is an intent when I sit down, but it just comes innately. It's not like I would like to be able to paint more like Max Beckmann, but that just doesn't come out that way. You know?
Well, you know, I wonder more of the attempt of the individual to seek the alternative, and I think that in my position it's easier because I don't have any background to hold me accountable, so to speak, and I feel like I'm more allowed to improvise, and I feel less guilt doing so.
There is guilt.
And less difficulty and less, you know, obviously the self-awareness. That level of coherence, somewhat mixed with self-awareness, can really drag you down, and can really make you stare at the canvas, and then eventually finding yourself doing this very same thing you do all over again.
Yeah.
So how do you seek the alternative? Yes.
Yeah.
How do you seek the alternative, and how does the alternative become something completely different and make you a versatile individual artist?
Well, if you're driven to make art as you are, and we've described, your intent may be one thing, but as soon as you sit down, it's a meditation. You know, it all falls by the wayside. I think that's part of the magic of it. You know, whatever you set out to do, it kind of takes on its own life, no matter what. It takes a life of its own. And if you're in the moment, you're in the moment. And but you talked about a lot of things in what you just said. It wasn't just that. I mean, you talked also about guilt and privilege. And that's also an issue for a lot of artists. You're not living up to your potential. You know, if you're not creating X amount of work, and if you're not, and that's, I think, a struggle throughout life, and also a maturation. You know, hopefully you reach a point where it's like, I am what I am, said Sam the man.
But I mean, an artist should be able to create a lot of work, I believe, and nevertheless create quality work.
Yes. It's true. Well, Picasso would knock off 2 or 3 paintings a day.
Well, that's what I mean.
But they were quick expressions. He was not painting as Rubens or Renoir. You know, it depends on what it is you're trying to make.
But also did very complex paintings that took forever.
Some.
Yes.
Some.
And but I guess again, you know, when we speak of a community such as ours that is literally crowded with creative, fortunately creative.
Well, we're on the East Coast, or if we're on the West Coast. I mean, the in-between is a lot of space.
But you must admit, in this community, there's like more artists than you can imagine. And as I said, fortunately, most of them, if not all of them, are just great artists. They understand color, they have the desire to create, and obviously you see it resulting in endless amount of of art shows and exhibitions and all that. But you wonder when you get to see the work, how come they're not enough restless?
Enough what? I'm sorry.
Restless.
Restlessness?
Yes. How come there's no more restlessness shown in the result of the work that will shake them, and that you will be, every time you will go to see their work or anybody's work, it will change. There will be signs of, as I said, restlessness that will result in either a different style or either different colors, different compositions that you, even though you go see the same artist.
Yeah, it's not an easy answer. You know, there's a few answers to that question. One is that, like I said, you touched on, artists are obsessive compulsives, and they get into a certain angle, and they fixate, and it interests them for a long period of time, and they try it in variations of a theme. You know, they'll keep working at it, perfecting it. It's a consciousness and an obsession that they need to express it until they have fulfilled that destiny. You know, that they have exhausted it and it's done. And yet there's the other side too, which speaks of the symbolist movement in the sense that it's an ill of society for a lot of artists too. They become victims of modern 21st century, and they catch onto something that people like, and they become materialistic. And they decide, well, this sold, so I will repeat it 1,000 times. And it becomes kitsch. And I think they lose their soul.
They should make it work for them, that 21st century reality that's, so to speak, very overwhelming. That's my point.
Yes, they should make it work for them, but they get caught up in, you know, the mortgage and the electricity and, you know, having to take care of a life, and they lose their soul. You know, you lose yourself in it.
Well, once I said that, you know, the process is the result, because we don't wait for a mega result, you know, a build up towards this, you know, grand result that we were to measure whether our life was successful or not, but rather a continuous process that speaks for results constantly, and therefore you don't have to have this level of anxiety that will, you know, obviously rob you from the energy so vital to create, you know. And so many people live the reality of selection. They always select what's good, what's not good. I'm going to show this, I'm not going to show that. And I think there where the problem starts, well, not a problem, I'm not really suggesting there's a problem, but in my eyes, there where it stands in artists' way to a greater ability to express, you know, and to show many sides that they have, and we all do. And again, I wouldn't even bother to think whether we are artists or not. I know for a fact we're all artists. I know for a fact even those who don't create are artists. You know, there's no distinction here.
No, there isn't.
And we shouldn't carry the burden of saying, okay, well, I guess what it is that will take that I need to live up to justify the word artist. I don't think that's...
Yeah, it's absurd, because just being a human being is a creative process. I mean, the nature of human is to create. You know, we are all artists. We all have it in us. And if you were to do any one thing every day of your life, you would improve. I don't care if you can't draw a straight line. If you choose to do that and you begin, you will become an exceptional artist. You will be working it. But in terms of everything you just said in the creative process, art should be fun. You know, at the end of the day, you should be having fun. You know, there should be something about it. That
yes. Even through the exhaustion, you know,
it should be fun.
Yes.
You know, it's
I agree.
the one avenue where beauty and truth, you know, you get to be a child forever if you're creating art.
I absolutely agree with you. I agree with you.
Truth, you know.
So what, you know, I have about 4 minutes from the visit in your studio and in the house with some pictures. So why don't we go to...
Sure.
And have a sense with Joanlee as we're sitting here July 3rd on Monday morning, opening a new week, and with the anticipation towards the 4th of July, which is tomorrow. And so let's see if we can make it work properly here with the visit to Joanlee, and here we go. To drink. I look like I need something to drink. But anyway, I'm visiting here with the lovely house of Joanlee, and I met Joanlee at the show, Vito Sisti show, the 19 women, or more than 19 women. It was fantastic. I got to see her paintings, which I thought were fabulous, and Actually, I knew her just from seeing her around, but now I know the power behind her art, and so we're going to get a glimpse of her art here at the house, and maybe let her walk us around a little bit and enjoy it together and appreciate the art. Okay?
Professional.
Okay. So,
hi.
hi.
Good afternoon.
Well, to see a big smile is a good thing.
Yes, it's always a good thing.
Yes.
So here you are. You're at my home, and my home seems to be an extension of art, and hence this is why we're here. I'm here to show you some of my pieces, and we can talk more.
For the most part, your pieces are what? Oil, acrylic?
They're oil.
They're oil.
They're oil.
And a little bit of the background, and maybe just a few words about yourself?
Sure. I'm a graduate of School of Visual Arts, and I came out of the 80s. My contemporaries were Rodney Greenblatt, Kenny Scharf, Keith Haring. We all went to school together. So we were big in the East Village way back when, so I'm dating myself. I started off, I guess, more as a sculptor, segueing into painting by encaustics. In the last show I was in, I went back to encaustics, which is a wax medium. I'm not so much a pop artist as I am a symbolist, and my art is symbolic. It's more psychological and figurative, which you'll see in a moment.
Good. That was a good switch, huh?
That was very good. I love that. That's great. Well, the colors are so saturated. You know, it works with this kind of Yeah, long time ago. That was psychotic.
Yeah. We'll say it's part of the
Will it even out or you don't know?
Yes, it's probably not. I wonder what's happening. This is a brand new tape. Wow, is that it? You did serious.
I did, and I played one a lot by then.
Okay, so this was a brief visit to the house of Joanlee, and we went through some of the paintings, and just, as I said, a little glimpse, and hopefully we can get her to come to visit with us at with the Hello Hello show, public access, and maybe give her some exposure and definitely interact. And it seems like there is a lot to talk about. But just a few words from Joanlee, and I guess we'll catch up later.
Ready?
Good.
I'm glad you came over. It was great.
Well, I'm glad you invited me.
And you get to see what I hang on my walls.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully we will get together and I'll show you more of my work through
Yes,
the
definitely.
portfolio.
So next step is to come down to the station and to
Yeah, I'd love
reveal the rest of the mystery.
to. Yes, much mystery.
Thank you. So this was, I think, a successful visit. As much as it was improvised, nevertheless, we got a glimpse, and I just want to mention that we are sitting here with Joanlee Montefusco, July 3rd, Monday morning, opening a week, and so I still wonder about the word symbolist, and as a poet myself, and I know that you also incorporate poetry with your paintings, and the painting that I bought from you had, which I thought was a great idea, an envelope in the back where you have some writing that speaks for whatever, another dimension of expression, and how the two come together. How does as far as symbolism, because as a poet, symbols, metaphors is all we thrive on, really. The writing and the paintings, as far as being a symbolist is concerned.
Well, I've been a little obsessed in the past 2 years. There are visual journals that have, I guess the background is, for 13 years I worked at ABC and NBC News doing graphics for all the news magazine shows, World News, Primetime, 2020. And as much as I left and rejected that world, it still sits with me. And the written word and the visual context that one comes up with in relationship to the story, it's become very compelling to me. So I've done this visual journal, which my last show is all about. I did new interpretations of some of the writing, and I write very, 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 very short, uncomfortable stories based in my experiences. Some of them have been tweaked, but some of them are verbatim. And that old expression where life is stranger than art. If you write the stuff, people don't believe it. Well, yeah, they don't believe it, but most of it's true. The awkwardness of everyday interactions. And I guess it is symbolic of where we are in society and how awkward we all can be, or how uncomfortable those moments are. And for me, putting it in a visual with the written word, I find it very interesting. So this past show I did that. I did, I think, 8 pieces, and you have one now. Mm-hmm. And I just thought the mystery of having the story behind the picture itself, it was so personalized that you own it, you can read it. Because when you look at the piece itself, you really can't, unless you were to focus and take a magnifying glass and try and read it. You may not be able to interpret it at first glance.
Yes, the reason why I'm talking about it and also can relate to it is because a lot of people suggested that I should bring my writing and incorporate it in the art, and never knew how difficult it was until I started to try and implement. There is, and I think that very important things come to be tested as you're in the midst of this attempt to bring these two mediums together, and it's like descending beyond the cliche of the obviousness, because obviously. There could be a reality of slap it on, like when you go to a restaurant and they just slap something on your table and they don't care if it's tasty or not, they don't care if you eat it or not, type of thing, type of metaphor. So when I started approaching the canvas with these kind of desire for fusion, I was belittled by the difficulty. I was really humbled by the degree of difficulty.
Yes,
And
it's true. It's
it
true.
really, it's real. And it's like there aren't that many things that I say that I'm humbled by. But no, really, this was like really a good.
So it struck a chord with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for example, when I see art that has writings incorporated, especially if it's the writings of the artist himself or herself. So I definitely pay attention, and I definitely look deeper, and I take my time because I know the degree of difficulty. But I'm a great believer in fusion anyway, because that's how I do it as a musician, as a writer, as an artist. I try to bring the reality of breakthroughs of one medium immediately to the other mediums that I'm involved in, and hopefully you will share the same degree of success from whatever, music to art, art to writing, writing to, which is all basically art. But that goes back directly, and this is another question that I want to ask, goes back directly to the level of complacency. You know, they cannot be justified because we live in an overwhelming times, you know, because 21st century robs us from our free time or our space to express our individualism, you know. Again, what do you think contributes, other than what we know as the society, you know, marching into 21st century progress or technology or sophistication, the self-expression, the unique self-expression?
What robs us?
Yeah, and in the same token also just the branching out, so to speak.
The multifaceted,
yes,
the
and the branching.
multicolorization.
Yes.
I can tell you exactly, from my opinion, what it comes from. Lack of daydream time. You need daydream time. It's not enough to say, okay, I got 2 free hours, let me sit down and create. You actually need blocks of time where your mind is just doing what it does without you telling it what to do. You know, you do, and it comes back to 21st century, 20th century, even 19th century, you know, whatever it is. If you're putting a cog in a wheel every day and you haven't enough time to daydream, you're not going to create. You know, you need downtime. You have to.
But what if you don't have that? And
you have to take it.
What if you can only give it to yourself? You know, like saying, well, this is the time I have, now go do it.
Well, if you can actually be successful with that, you're an anomaly, I think. I don't think you're an exception to the rule. Most artists need some peace. You know, they just do. They're meditative people. You know, they're introspective. They're difficult. You know, they need some peace.
So when you think of your writing, yes, and your art, you know, and you look ahead 5 or 10 or 15 years, I mean, what do you see? I mean, do you have something that speaks for desire, or speaks for something that's like preconceived?
Yeah, I do. It's not as if there's a lack of creative impulse. It's all here. You know, it's in here. I could sit down and produce 100 paintings right now. You know, sit down and do that. It's giving yourself the privilege to do that. You know, allowing yourself to do that. Do I project into the future? I'm a big projectionist, and it doesn't mean that it's all going to come to pass. And I have 3 simultaneous existences projecting out at the same time. I want to get more back to the primitive. I want a simpler existence. And sometimes I'm drawn to the literal primitivism. I fantasize about moving to New Mexico and creating a personal enclave right on near the Indian reservation, because they really speak to me. You know, this kind of, you don't have to go to Tahiti like again. You can stay in your backyard and find it.
True, but we live in a place where it's, I mean, when I first arrived here 23 years ago, I felt it in the air. I felt the reality of the lifestyle of the Indian 300 years ago. I felt that.
It exists today.
Oh,
still.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
And so we don't really have to go anywhere to find out. But what about the 100 paintings that you said you can do right now?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. It has a lot more to do. Well, you know, the obsessiveness I have right
because
now.
you said I can sit here and make 100, but
I'm not doing it. Yeah.
Well-
Like I said, I am definitely the product of my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I am the compilation of my experiences. And here I sit today as a middle-aged woman struggling to produce. You know, I struggle to produce because I fight my demons. You know, I fight the demons of my expectations, my family expectations, the expectations of society, you know, that Protestant work ethic, you know. As much as I'm not doing it, I'm still sitting here struggling internally with it. You know?
But what about portraying the demons? That's my
Yes,
point.
putting
So,
it out.
and because it's
Well,
already
I do
available
put
and,
it out
and
here.
at
This
your
is where-
disposal.
yeah, it's coming out in the writing.
Uh-huh.
It's coming out in the writing. It's coming out in the graphics that I do with that.
Uh-huh.
It is seeping out.
So
more
it's actually a
liberally.
privilege to
Yeah.
have those demons or whatever it
It is
is.
a
If you can
privilege.
capitalize on it, even though I you know, capitalize is a word that's somewhat squeaky, but nevertheless, it is a privilege. It is like something
is a
that a lot of people
privilege.
don't have, and therefore cannot put
It's
it
a
to use.
privilege to be conscious. There's a lot of walking dead out there. It's a privilege to be conscious, but you pay a price for that. You suffer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're highly sensitized. You know, you do reflect what's going on out there, and you absorb it. And is that a privilege? It's a struggle. Yeah.
Yes, but if you were to get acquainted with the privilege of putting to use those sensations as an artist, for example, I always thought that musicians are the most sensitive breed of the group of artists. For some reason, there's a very, very high level of sensitivity, especially
And
if you
drug
see.
abuse and
Well,
alcoholism and
Yeah, well,
familial rifts.
that is actually secondary, even though it's self-destructive. It's secondary to the fact that on stage a musician will be highly sensitive. If something goes wrong, it cannot just like things cannot continue. Things must stop to realize what is wrong. But therefore,
There's a high level of discipline that goes into being an artist. That cliche, the crazy artist, doesn't really apply because the most successful artists are the most disciplined artists. You know, they go to their studio, they work every day, they produce. You know, so you can't be out of your mind and not be successful. It just doesn't work.
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But the point I was trying to make is that you bring the awkward into the highly sensitive.
That's right.
And then what happens is you bring it only so you can really penetrate through it and then leave it alone completely, because then you suddenly find yourself operating normally on the basis of the awkward,
Yes.
you know, and then being very casual in the midst of intensity, you know, so it doesn't have to really show on your face and you don't have to look like you're just about to
Deranged.
die or yes, or sleep deprived or life deprived, you know, but rather creative. And that when people would look at your work, they would say, I don't much care about the work. I want to know how come you're still on your feet. You know, that kind of point of reference.
That is the projection of the future, is to be able to get more and more of that, you know, expression out there and not be so self-conscious. You know, you want to be more on the edge, you know, keep pushing.
Because you know that the consciousness is there serving you because you put it in place.
Yes.
You yourself put it in place,
Yes.
and it's serving you quietly behind the scenes. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, and I think the older we all get, the less we care what people say or think. You know, you do become more daring.
Mm-hmm.
You'll become more daring as time goes on, and you'll just put it out there and, you know, to hell with it. You know, just do what you want. This particular show I edited. You know, I couldn't put certain pieces in. I could not express them.
How so?
Because they were too close to home. We live in a small culture. We live in a small society. And anyone who took the time to look at the art and read it would know, oh, that's about me, you know, or that's about him, you know. And it's like, you have to choose. It's almost like the parable, you know, the Messiah is not recognized in his own town. You know, if you do this in your own town, you will be crucified. You know, you
Yes.
better take it out of town.
Yeah.
You know? So it was limiting. I found myself limited.
Do you feel like reading some?
Sure,
Are you in
and
the mood?
these will protect the you know, the guilty, because they're not so.
Okay, very good. They're about people from New Mexico or something.
No, they're about people that won't recognize
They won't
themselves,
recognize themselves.
and people who are no longer around here.
Okay.
So
Now, we don't care whether they're around or not. We want to hear.
here's a visual, and I did different interpretations of these.
Okay, I'm going to put it on display while you read, okay?
Sure. Just you got it?
That's the best I can do, okay?
That's good enough. It was the first time I had been to the MoMA since its renovation. I was waiting in the coat check line. My daughter, an art major, was waiting in the discount line for students on the other side of the reception hall. We were here to see the Edvard Munch show. To my right was a large poster of Munch's infamous painting, The Scream, an image of psychological terror, the likes of which we stumble over in our dreams. He was a symbolist, an intellect that rejected the modern world and its materialism. He preferred a mind in its irrational state. I was getting my bearings, mulling over how many of the Scream had been produced, how many of them had been stolen, which of the Screams had been taken, and which one was I looking at. All these thoughts were going through my mind when a very familiar head imposed itself in the front of the poster. My ex-husband, Steve. I was pleasantly surprised until I followed his arm down. Attached to his long arm was a petite 30-something, or was it 20-something? Steve was 50.
That's good. Shall we put the other one, the next one?
Sure.
Let me just do that. 1 second. Give me this.
Suddenly, he felt a surge of tears coming on. His patient goes rigid, then slack. Her eyes roll up into her young head as she slides down to the floor. 2 vials of blood slowly roll off the edge of the desk. The mother, cradling the child's head, gently calls her. The child's lids fluttering, she stammers, "What? What?" and then says, "I'm going to be sick." Dr. Joe hated this, anything causing pain. He became an allergist specifically to do no harm. And here he was, taken once more by the nature of the human condition, unable to bear its own bloodletting. The child lay on the floor, her mother cooing over her as he sat patting her hand. A tear rolled under his chin. Time for retirement, began his litany. Too old to try another field of medicine. He thought himself safe with analgesics, but maybe ophthalmology would have been the way to go.
Okay. Taking a little break here. But anything else you want to read? Oh, this is...
Here, this is something else. See, these aren't as, some of them are personal and some of them aren't, and like I said, trying to protect the guilty. Don't read the ones too close to home.
Okay.
I'm still walking the land. No one tells how long the journey. No one looks right into the eye. Everyone to their own language, everyone to their own time. There exists no demarcation, there remains no chart. What to make of them who build forts? What to say of those screaming for an exit? A year of mourning like mercury on the floor.
Good. That's and again, as I said, as I personally experienced the level of difficulty of incorporating writings with art, I can appreciate when I see attempts by other artists, especially when the attempts succeed. Especially then.
Well, these, you know, like for the show, there was a reach there. It was different. This is a book. This is a book, a visual graphic book. So it's more graphic based. But then for the show, you want a more fine art base. So I reinterpreted these images. And I did, as you saw, you own a piece. There were encaustics.
Yes.
The writing with the imagery, with the wax, which made it feel ancient. You know, it gave it this kind of distressed, older look to it, which wouldn't necessarily work in a book form.
Yes, definitely.
So you have to pick and choose.
I understand, but still, nevertheless, I really am more expecting the explosive aspect, but
Aren't
not,
we all?
but not yes, but not necessarily. When I say explosive, not and necessarily controversial, not necessarily teasing and annoying, not necessarily revolutionary, not necessarily rebellious. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I'm not
I
talking
do.
that. I'm just saying explosive, that someone would look at the art and say, I'd like to know more. I'd like to look further.
Yeah.
You know, this is the moment of suspense, where this is the moment of interaction, interconnection, where an individual says, not only that I like what I see, I'd like to see more. I'd like to look further. I'd like to look behind. I'd like to look from the side. I like. Do you know what I mean? I like.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
It's a work in progress for most people. You know, it really truly is. And this particular work that you're seeing is a perfect example of this.
But there is a way to expedite it.
Yes, by producing more. Yeah.
or you know, it's your responsibility to trick yourself into it. And really, in nowadays, you're saying 21st century, the name of the game is trick yourself into it. You know, put a note in your shoe.
Yeah.
You know, something which is the oldest trick in the world. But you know, you must, in the face of these kind of distractions.
I don't know that they are always such distractions. I mean, having talked about the ills of society and everything else, you do pick and choose. I have chosen a different angle. You know, hopefully I'll live to be 80. Maybe I'll have that luxury. But I also chose to raise a child through this, you know, and to build a home and to keep a lifestyle together. And it was conscious. There was nothing unconscious in it. You know, this was a conscious choice, and I knew as I went into it that there would be balancing. You know, there would have to be a balance. And it's not so much the fact that I make art. I mean, it's just a miracle that I make art through it all, that I've managed through all those years, the terrible 2s, the 4s, the 5s, going through the teenage years. She's now grown and in college, that I did. Every year I produced, I'd never stopped.
Yes.
I know too many friends who just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It was over. You know, they just couldn't do it. They couldn't do it.
And that goes back to what we were mentioning before, is that obviously, you know, for the sake of not to make a big deal out of, you know, a casual intensity, you know, there are ways to achieve all that, and it's too obvious. Why would people quit? You know, it's just too obvious.
Yes, it is.
And then
sometimes
and
much
those
too
who
obvious.
don't, and those who don't, it's too obvious why they would just like keep on like hammering the same issue over and over again, but rather let life, you know, penetrate through them. And whether it's cliche, whether it's ironic, whether this is, you know, after the fact, anything can come to the surface and be acceptable, you know, and welcomed. But after the fact, after that fact, that you can allow yourself to say, well, the process is the result, therefore no selections.
That's right. The process is the work.
Is the work, exactly. So why should I, for example, personally speaking, why should I even think twice before a show if I was working and dare to say slaving, really, because it's that level of saying, well, it's not only work, I really slaved, I really pushed, I really this. And then therefore, because if the process is the result, everything will be shown.
Well, the process is
Meaning
the
what I mean
result.
is that when I say, when the process is the result, everything will be shown in the work and will be evident in the work, because I let it be such as continuous results that produce a mega result without the anticipation for that grand result, grand frame,
But it
grand.
sounds as if you are pursuing that grand result. You know, it depends on the type of artist you are. Everyone works differently. This particular art that I'm trying to create at this point in time, there's a subtlety involved in it. It's never going to be the grand statement. This is the kind of art that's just awkward. It's the kind of art where you're walking down a corridor, you open a door, and you go, oh. And there's a real subtlety involved in that, and it takes time to tease it out. It's going to take time to tease this out. And it's true, if I produce more every day, it would be teased out at a faster rate. But time takes time. I know, what a cliche.
Time takes time.
It does take time. It's like baking. You know, these tiny little stories took 3 weeks to edit, each and every one of them. I would go back and edit them over a 3-week period. I'm in a writer's group with Vito. I mean, talking about Vito Sisti, who was
Yes.
the curator of this last show. who
Yes,
I consider
definitely.
a true Renaissance man.
Yes, definitely.
He also writes, and we have this workshop, and in this workshop I bring it in week after week, these tiny little stories. Other people are writing novels. I'm writing these uncomfortable little vignettes and editing them word by word. And so it's a teasing process. Trying
Absolutely.
To get it out.
But every step of the way for me is not a step that leads to the great step. That's not what I meant. I actually said that every step of the way in itself is already a statement, is already comfortably existing. And so much so that I can say, well, I can show that without having the aspirations that this is going to lead me to something absolutely incredible, when I already think that just the actual
Absolutely.
presentation is incredible.
Yeah.
And when you let go in that sense, then you realize that, again, this, if you can get rid of the fear of selection, if you can get over that as an artist.
No editing, huh?
Well, I mean, there's a certain degree of editing, of
Yeah,
course,
there's
but
always editing.
of course there is. But I mean, this whole concept of I'm going to show this and I'm not going to show that. If you can get over that, you will not believe what's going to happen to you. And obviously I learned a lot about that, because most of the work I didn't want to show, when I did, I sold.
That's
So-
the whole thing. I put
but
these
it's
pieces in
real.
the show, and I did not expect any of them to sell.
Well, it's
You know?
real. It's real. So what I mean, if you find yourself comfortably existing with the step of a fraction of that process, so to speak, that suddenly comes to light as if it is the main message, and it will automatically, naturally become like that. That all these little things that you never thought much about suddenly become front row.
Yeah, I love those little things.
And it's amazing. It's just
It is.
amazing
It
how it
is
works.
the
And
little
then
things.
when you speak of self-confidence, that's how you indirectly, directly, you name it, build self-confidence, because it just forms around you unknowingly, just by you letting it happen. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Well, whether you believe it or not, we're about 2 minutes away from concluding this show of an hour.
I just want to mention Vito again. He's having another show in September, which I'm a part of, and one of many. There must be about 20 of us. And the show will be September 9th at Ashwell Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And Vito Sisti is the curator, and he always puts together a very eclectic, interesting group of people, as you know.
Yes, definitely.
It's always fun. Back to
Yes.
fun. Art
Back to
being
fun.
fun. He
Yes.
holds on to the fun aspect.
Absolutely.
It's not just a business. It's not at all a business to him.
No,
And that's nice.
I agree. So I just wanted to mention, we're here with Joanlee Montefusco. Monday morning, July 3rd. Be well, July 4th tomorrow. And I guess it's all about fun time and all
Fun.
about, be careful, because as you know, really very hectic outside, traffic-wise, people-wise, whatever it is wise. Keep up the good work. We know you're watching, and we know you're supporting the station, and we're supporting the idea of public access, and that makes us feel happy. And I guess what else makes us happy? Just to be here, continuing with the tradition of public access, to a degree of, as they say, access in the hands of the public. And we still have about 30 seconds to go, so we will see you again tomorrow.